Hey guys, what's up? I'm here with a review, first review of 2017. This is going to be a doozy. Also, I have a broken thumb. That's also fun too. Starting off that new year just right. I'm going to be reviewing the Vincent Price horror comedy slasher zombie monster mad scientist horror movie from 1971, The Abominable Dr. Phibes. Now, before I get into the movie itself, I gotta mention something. I have actually not seen too many Vincent Price movies. I think the only other Vincent Price movie, I think the only other movie I've seen where he had like a major starring role in it was the original The Fly from the 50s, which is an absolutely fantastic movie. But other than, I think, The Abominable Dr. Phibes, The Fly, and I think he had maybe a small part in, I can't remember the one movie. It was some horror comedy. It was like the bloodbath, um, at the haunted bathhouse or something. It was like some weird title, and it was a horror comedy, and he played like a cult leader in it, and he was pretty good in that too. But I'm talking about The Abominable Dr. Phibes. Now, this is another one of those movies where originally I just kind of sat down and watched it because I had wanted to see it for a while, and I figured I wouldn't review it or talk about it on my channel. And then I watched it, and I was like, shit, I gotta do like a hands-free kind of no rehearsal, no notes review of this movie really quick because it was actually really fucking good. So, The Abominable Dr. Phibes follows Vincent Price portraying Anton Phibes, a doctor, organist, biblical scholar, as well as mad scientist, who basically lives in this kind of Art Deco, kind of like stylized Art Deco, German expressionist castle with his silent kind of assistant, and he is basically wants to kill the 9 surgeons that he believes are responsible for his wife's death, which occurred I think 10 years prior to when the movie takes place. The movie takes place in 1925, I believe. Basically, he wants to get revenge on the doctors he believes are responsible for his wife's death. And he died that same night, or at least, apparently he died. The movie, I should go ahead and say right now, the movie has an absolutely amazing kind of visual style, especially with the set design, and not just in Phibes' kind of house and or mansion and or castle, but also in some of the regular kind of mansion sets that you see. In one of the mansion sets, it gives off this very kind of almost like a kind of stage play vibe with how the set looks. It looks very, very, I don't want to say like fake, because it's not the right word to use for it, but it looks very, very interesting, very, very strange and surreal. It kind of looks like in the scene that there's a winding staircase and it goes up to nothingness, there's no second floor, it just goes up and disappears, and the walls are completely white. It's weird as hell to look at. It's hard to explain too, but there's also scenes. There's also a scene in a hospital where the walls are, where everything in the hospital is completely green, which is something that I don't even think in the 20s would be a thing, because I've always kind of imagined hospitals, especially not just in movies but in real life, to be very, very, unless it was like a children's hospital, of course, but I always expected them to be very, very white and kind of very, very black and white, gray, kind of not depressing, but very, very sterile, very clean looking. I always kind of imagined it like that, and considering that green is a color that is often it's a color that is often contributed or kind of used as symbolism for illness. For example, in Natural Born Killers, whenever there's green lighting or anything that is green on screen, it represents the mental illness of the character of Mickey Knox. I'm now analyzing Natural Born Killers, but that's kind of a vibe I got from those scenes in the hospital. the set has a very kind of Rocky Horror Picture Show, Phantom of the Paradise, kind of Malatesta's Carnival of Blood kind of vibe going on throughout the entire thing. The sets are very, very strange and surreal, especially in Phibes' castle. And it's obviously heavily inspired by German Expressionism and kind of Art Deco style, very Metropolis and Caligari-esque imagery, or sets, I should say. The acting in the film, the acting from everybody is fairly solid. I would say that Vincent Price gives the performance of a lifetime because he talks in the film without actually moving his mouth, because his character kind of wears a prosthetic mask, which doesn't allow him to basically show any kind of facial expression, so he had to make it look like he was talking underneath the mask without ruining this makeup that they did on him. And I know that, it was just a voiceover, but I think he does a fairly good job of playing this very creepy, kind of silent character. The writing in the film is also very good and very witty and kind of humorous at times. I can't really think of a specific moment, mainly because I'm trying to do this on my toes as a kind of like no non-scripted review. So I'm just going to leave it at the writing is very good. It's very witty at times. What there is of lighting and camera work, well, not what there is, but the lighting, camera work, music, really everything from a technical standpoint is very solid. I would say that the highlights of the film are the kind of character designs, the costumes, and most definitely the set design of the film. Even if you've seen stuff like Rocky Horror Picture Show, or Phantom of the Paradise, or Malatesta's Carnival of Blood, I would say see this movie because this one is probably the oldest movie I can think of, except for like the early German Expressionist films, of course. It's probably one of the earliest kind of color horror films to have this kind of surreal set design, at least as far as I know. What there is of gore effects, blood, any like bones, anything like that, kind of rotted flesh, anything like that, all very solid as well. The makeup effects on Price himself as Phibes are very good. And shit, I don't know what else to say. One thing I will say is I've noticed something. I noticed something while watching this, and this may just be me that thinks this, but I get this feeling that there are other connections to other films within this film, but not like it's making reference to these film movies because they came out afterwards. But I feel like the set design most definitely inspired De Palma's film Phantom of the Paradise, because Phantom of the Paradise also has a very similar kind of Art Deco kind of design going on with the sets. Also, the fact that the main character loses, who's very much kind of like a phantom character who plays the organ, loses his voice and regains it through use of music and technology, through use of his basically knowledge of music and technology, which is something that I've only seen in two movies, and that is Phibes and Phantom of the Paradise. So I think there might be a connection there. There is a specific scene where somebody has a key put in their chest, and somebody has to get it out. I feel like that's very much an inspiration for, obviously, James Wan's film Saw. I feel like that is very obvious. The whole biblical killings with each murder being inspired by one of the biblical plagues, I feel like that is very reminiscent of David Fincher's Seven, which, if you haven't seen Seven, it's a really good movie. I'd also like to think that this movie is definitely inspired by a lot of Universal monster movies, and I feel like I know that like House by the Cemetery, Fulci's House by the Cemetery is kind of got this kind of like Universal monster vibe or old school monster movie vibe where the monster isn't truly revealed to the end. And I feel like with the look of Phibes and the look of Dr. Freudstein from House by the Cemetery, I feel that might be a little bit of a reference as well. But now I'm starting to ramble with talking about references and like, oh my gosh, this film inspired so many other movies. But I mean, it's kind of weird how many similarities there are to films that came out after it. But overall, on the gore meter from 1 to 10, 1 being something like Nosferatu, 10 being something like Peter Jackson's Brain Dead, the Abominable Dr. Phibes probably sits at like a 2. It is a fairly currently it holds a PG-13 rating, and I mean I honestly think it could go for even lower. It really isn't that gory at all, but I feel like the entertainment of the movie doesn't come from necessarily the violence, but the kind of interesting ways the kills are done in the film, as well as definitely the art design. That is something that definitely would make somebody want to watch this film. Overall, I gotta say, I really love this movie, and I think it's gonna inspire me to dive more into kind of Vincent Price films. I do most definitely need to see House on Haunted Hill. I have not seen that one yet, and I own it like 17 times because it's in public domain, and I own like a bunch of those public domain sets. So I will probably get around to that eventually. But I'd probably have to give the Abominable Dr. Phibes probably a 4, maybe a 4.5 out of 5. That sits at either an 8 or a 9 out of 10. It's a fairly beautiful film. It looks absolutely amazing. The sets do, and it's very intriguing. And I have not seen a film like this. I have not seen a film with a set this good, as well as a villain so sympathetic in the absolute longest time. But I'm starting to ramble. So anyway, guys, this is Biscuit Boo Horror Reviews signing off. Peace. Hey, you see this shelf? You see how it's empty? Yeah, this is what happens when you record a review and then you lean forward a bit too much. And yeah, your DVDs go all the way clear to the other side of your room.